Hey, my loves, hope everybody is doing well. My name is Zoe Ahmed, and we are chilling up on the floor. So recently we found out that 90% of our listeners, they are not subscribers. Please do subscribe so that we can learn habit of commitment, right? But anyways, thank you for those that we've subscribed. We've reached 4,000 followers and subscribers on Spotify, which is a milestone. And of course, we're still growing on YouTube. To follow us on the floor with Zo Ahmed. Today, I am joined by one of the coolest person, someone that is my mentor, someone that I cherish and I love so dearly, someone who has set a good reputation in creating his journey, his work through his dedication and service. He's the writer and the author of 10 publications and two. Is the two books revised or is the two
revised
edition? Yeah. Okay, so two revised, which gives us to 12 publications of different books. The book that I like is 10 Minutes Renovation, which is speaking around how to practice a faith that can lead a world without walls and love without limitations. And beyond that, he has wrote the book Behind Esther, which is a thriving when God sees a distance. I think I've talked about the story of Esther in one of my podcasts some time ago in October last year. And then he did 10 Minutes Transformation, which is a revised edition. You should check it out. And Chris, welcome to On the Floor.
Thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here.
Yes, it's amazing to have you.
I've been looking forward to it.
Right. So when we started talking, I was like stalking the work that you do and the work that you've put. How did you commit to make 12 publications?
Oh, that's a good question. My father recently passed away, and so we went back to where he was living. It was the second house I lived in as a child. So we were digging through all sorts of childhood objects and memorabilia, and my dad had kept some of the stories that I had written as an elementary school child. So it reminded me how much writing has just been a part of my life.
Right.
There's something about me that's sort of wired that way. I can writing helps me process things, I think. So I've always enjoyed writing, and I've always nurtured the desire to write and publish a book. And so I think the first time I was able to do that was shortly after graduate school was over. I took one of the papers that I had written for a class and turned it into a book, and loved that experience. And then so I've been writing and publishing ever since. And for me, my model for writing is just to try to write a little bit every day.
Right.
I know some authors, they'll take 2 months and hide away in some cabin in the woods and knock out a book. But for me, it's maybe 30 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. And sometimes I might write one sentence, and sometimes I might get a whole page out. But
yes,
I really believe in the significance of the small, the seed planting idea. If you planting those little seeds, eventually it's going to grow into something large.
Absolutely. We believe in small movements here on the podcast, which is one of the statements that we love to say. Small movement contribute to bigger impact. Yeah. As long as you try and continue trying, repeat the cycle once again and try again. And then eventually, I remember you say to me, you should start writing. I'm like, okay, I'm so excited. And then first night I started writing, I wrote a page. Second day I wrote a page. Third day I'm like, I don't know. How then do you come to a point to say you find inspiration and you stay disciplined to your to your subject that you're writing about, specifically on your books? How then do you stay really disciplined sometimes, even if you do not have inspiration?
That's a great question, because a lot of times we think about inspiration as something that just happens.
Right.
And sometimes it feels like that, I mean, we'll be driving or taking a shower, or waking up from a nap, and all of a sudden we're hit with inspiration, and we try to write it down or paint it, or turn it into a song, whatever it is. I guess my philosophy is that inspiration requires perspiration, right? And so,
Oh.
by creating habits of creation, in this case writing, or it could be painting, or writing, making music, but by creating habits of creation, we're creating space for inspiration to come. And
Right.
it's more likely, I think, to come, in my experience, when we're regularly creating that space for it. So I think, inspiration requires preparation.
Right. So preparation requires dedication and commitment and discipline. Interesting. So guys, if you're listening, I am chilling with Chris. He's the writer and author of 10 publication, and now he's got 2 revised editions. So this podcast specifically, it was researched by you. Which is one of the cool things. When you send me this topic, I was like, oh my God, this is sound fascinating, because I haven't touched base on this topic, on this particular topic before. So do you want us to introduce the concept to the listeners and to me, and then we discuss?
Okay, so the concept of mindfulness, or
Resume.
okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, right. So resume virtues versus eulogy virtues, right? So David Brooks is a best-selling author. He's written a number of books, and
right.
One of his recent books, it was called The Second Mountain. The Second Mountain, and he has a paragraph in one of the chapters where he makes this distinction between 2 different ways of the goal of our life, in 2 different ways.
Yes.
So one he calls resume virtues, and he argues that this is very much the dominant model, especially in the Western world, and here in the United States. And it is exactly what it sounds like. That if you had a blank sheet of paper in front of you, and you could imagine the very best resume, right, the strongest resume, with the highest forms of education from the best schools, references from the most well-known people in positions of influence and authority, and experiences in top of mind companies and organizations with large budgets and huge impact. Most of us would love to have that kind of resume. And so Brooks argues that many of us, we spend the better part of our lives pursuing those resume virtues, creating resumes, if you will.
Yes.
Getting the right jobs, meeting the right people, getting the right education, getting higher up on the corporate ladder, the right salaries, and that sort of rat race, right? And the problem with that, he argues, is that it's almost all externally based,
beyond internal.
It's very stressful.
Yes.
And there's so much competition involved in that we often find ourselves unable to achieve these resume virtues. And that's what Brooks calls the first mountain. That
right.
Many of us, especially in the first, say, 20 or 30 or 40 years of our lives, that's the mountain that we're climbing on. Because we think if we can just get to the top of that mountain, if we can get that career, that education, that position, that corner office, that degree, etc., we'll finally be happy. And what he argues is that so many times when someone actually gets to the top of that mountain, they realize, oh, I think I've sort of missed what being human is all about.
Right. So do you think the first mountain takes away the form of, it dehumanizes you while you're in the process of climbing it? You lose yourself, you lose your human side.
Yes, I think that's a really great insight. It is dehumanizing, very much so, because we become a product, right? We make ourselves a product to a company, to a school, to a dream, and we tend to lose our humanity. Of course, the other thing it does is it removes us from the present.
Yes.
Because this is all future oriented. If I could just get that in the future, there in the future, and so we lose the capacity to enjoy the present.
But then I think maybe that's how the society has brought us to be, to work for the future, to dream big, to be competitive, to be inspired, and to want more. We are always chasing, and we have this hunger that is you never get full because you're always chasing. And it's like, that's how the world is growing. There's something new, there's new technology, there's new fashion, there's new trend, there's better house. So every day we're wanting more. That's why I think as the decades passing by, we lose ourselves in a point. We lose ourselves in a point of building, or in a point of climbing that mountain. I like the way you say mountain. I was like, interesting word. So how then do we, in that process of climbing the mountain, how can we stay true to ourselves and stay relevant to ourselves beyond losing ourselves in the process of self-development? Should we call it self-development, or should we call it, is it a self-development, or we're climbing the mountain in a good way?
Yeah, I think self-development is a good word, I think. So, I mean, what David Brooks argues is that there is a second mountain, and it's not necessarily that the first mountain with the resume virtues is all bad.
Yes,
we all of us have talents and abilities that can be put to use for the good of organizations and their good work in the world. But there is a second mountain. And these two things can take place at the same time. We can climb the second mountain while we're also climbing the first mountain. And so the second mountain, he says, is what we might think of, what he calls eulogy virtues. What
are eulogy virtues?
So we imagine that we've died.
Right.
Life is over, right?
Okay.
And of course, different cultures have different traditions and rituals that they follow after the death of a person. But there's often in most cultures there's often a time and a space when people remember and say things about the person who's died.
Okay, so we do have that in my culture. We call that remembrance, or maybe during the burial process or during the funeral, we say either good things about the person. I don't know I don't know the term in English. Like, okay. Yes.
So eulogy refers to that. And so, the invitation there is to, okay, I'm going to imagine that I have died.
Yes.
And some friends or family are going to speak some remembrances. They're going to give a eulogy. What would I would I hope they say about me?
Mm.
You know? And very often when it comes to that scenario, we're, you know, it won't really matter to us if a friend gets up and says, well, you know, Chris was really great because he got a master's degree. You know, that's probably not what they're going to say.
Yes.
What we're hoping is that somebody would stand and say, well, you know, Chris was so kind. He was so compassionate. He was always so present with me when I needed him. He was reliable. He was generous. He was so hospitable. He was so brave and courageous.
Right.
So, you know, those kinds of things, which are very different from resume virtues from that first mountain, because they're all internal. And
But I have a question, Chris. You know, I love it, but in where I'm coming from, we are not taught to talk about preparation for death, right? Or we are not with a subconscious around our mind to say you do good because you receive good, right? So everything that we do it with a sense of humility, a sense of being human, a sense of community, a sense of respect, a sense of a village, you know, like, you know, that sense of oneness, but not the intention to say you are doing good so that you can build a good reputation when you die. I don't know, like a good remembrance, but you're doing it so that you can gain while you're still living. I don't know if it makes sense. So to what point do we then start climbing the second mountain that you are telling us today?
yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think David Brooks is borrowing this from Ignatius of Loyola, is a figure in the Catholic religion.
Right.
He was the founder of the Society of Jesus, and this idea, I don't know that he came up with it, but it was very common for him to talk about this. And so what Ignatius of Loyola and David Brooks are doing is they're using death as just a way for us to remember, oh, there's something more important in life.
Right. Yes.
So it's not that we focus on kindness and compassion and integrity, so that we'll have a good reputation.
That's good.
Because that again is very externally focused.
Yes.
They're just, you know, death, the thought of death is can often be a clarifying thing for us, something that gives us perspective. So we're reminded that our life is temporary here on earth. It's only going to be a few years. And so in that time, what's going to matter the most? Is it going to matter the most that I got a master's degree?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that could be helpful, but is it going to matter most that I really was kind and caring and compassionate and saw myself as part of this larger human community, right? And contributed to the flourishing of that community.
That's good. So you're doing good so that you can contribute to human change.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Now I get the concept. Okay. Yeah. So I think, yes, we are in the same page. I understand. So when you are, is that a service? Do you think that's a service, or when you are doing good, so towards the community changes, that a service, do you think?
Yes, I do. A service.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, in the Christian faith, Jesus says that one of the two most important commands is to love your neighbor as yourself.
Yes.
So it's now we don't always see this in American forms of Christianity, but at its foundation, it is about that connection to the other, to the community, and living for the good of other people.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's so interesting because when you do good nowadays, you don't get good, right? We live in that era where people, they don't need kindness no more. Like people, they've caring so much that sometimes if you give kindness, people, they question to say, hey, where is this person from? We've never seen such behavior. So people, they question your behavior by doing good, or people, they investigate about you by you being good, just being you compassionate, but you being, people, they question that behavior because it's not something that is common. So how can we make sure that when we're doing good, we are having a mental health that is checked, and we continue to give ourselves beyond what people are saying?
Yeah, that's an interesting dilemma, isn't it?
It is.
And I think sometimes the pushback that we experience when we are trying to love our neighbor, sometimes the pushback is from the people around that who are observing that, because they don't like that neighbor. Maybe, for example, I'm showing compassion to someone whose race is different than mine, or whose gender identity is different than mine. And there are observers there who don't like that, and so they're going to push back against my doing good, my kindness there. But sometimes the pushback is from the person that we're serving, because they've had it's hard for them to trust that this act of service is coming without strings attached to it, or without an agenda attached to it. And so when that's the case, I think there are probably a couple of things we can do. One is to practice the spiritual practice of persistence.
Right.
We continue to love and do good, and over time we win a person's trust. They see that, okay, they really do mean this.
Absolutely. It reminds me of your book that you wrote, Mark, A Call of Service. When you wrote the book, you had that intention in mind. Maybe you can share, because I think it answers to the question around a service and giving.
Yeah, it is interesting. Each of the four Gospels in the Christian Bible are so they're all telling the same story, the story of Jesus, but they're telling it from a different angle. And so each Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, each of them have a little different take. Yeah, that they want to take away when we read. And one of Mark's is that idea of service. And I think one of the things that Mark tries to do is to show us the devotion that Jesus had to service. In other words, he served unto death, right? And so and Jesus himself experienced all sorts of pushback against the good that he was doing. Some of the people
was questioned. Yes.
And then, of course, a lot of the religious people around him questioned him, but that never stopped him. He just kept on loving,
right,
doing good, and eventually that won some people over.
Yes,
and eventually it got him killed too.
So you see, service, it comes with consequences, right? So I think that's true. I like it because you're taking back to the story of Jesus and bringing it to to the issues that we're facing. Sometimes if you're good, people, they question your goodness to say, oh my God, who's this person? We do not trust this behavior. It's a scandalous behavior. Maybe this person is hiding, bad things that they've done. That's why they're trying to act all nice. They call that all nice, right? So we live in times where sometimes the service that you give to people, some people, they receive it as a negative or as a threat. And you said it earlier on, you said it is because they have trust issues or they have insecurities or they've experienced trauma, they're going through trauma. Right. That's why they have these things that's blocking them to receive your service as a good service, but they question your service as a bad behavior, right? So I think it put us to, I think you wrote the book around, I was writing it down, around rebuilding relationship as someone on the Mount Floor plan. What was the book about about rebuilding your relationships?
So that book, Rebuilding Your Relationships, focuses on what's often called the Sermon on the Mount, which is this block of teaching in the book recorded in the book of Matthew. It's also recorded in the book of Luke.
Yeah.
Where in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7, Jesus gives what is probably some of his most important teaching there. And it probably boils down to two things in terms of relationships.
Yes.
There. So one, Jesus is very interested in our relationship with God.
Right.
And what he is trying to rebuild there is that he's dealing with a number of religious people who have become satisfied with the appearance of piety, the appearance of religiosity, rather than actually trying to know this God who created them and loved them. And so Jesus, especially in Matthew chapter 6, pushes against what he calls hypocrisy, which in Jesus' day, that word just literally meant to put on a mask.
Yes.
Like an actor or an actress. Jesus is saying, God is not really interested in you wearing a religious mask. He would like to get to know you. And so take
one-on-one.
Mask off,
Yes.
Be yourself with God, because he loves who you are.
Wow. I'm a church girl. I like the church conversations. I'm like, wow, you're taking me back to Sunday. But I enjoy that. They say come with your baggage, right? And then I'll lift you. But so the intention was to explain in that book for you to take off the baggage that you're carrying and rebuild a new relationship.
Yeah. And then the other thing in terms of relationship that Jesus takes up in that Sermon on the Mount has to do with our relationship to other people. And again, he's dealing with religious people who have set the bar very low when it comes to how much do I need to do for my fellow human.
Yeah.
So for example, Jesus in that section, he says, now you've heard it said, do not murder. Do not murder. But I tell you, don't even harbor hate in your heart.
Yes.
And so, what he's doing with that is he's saying, look, you don't go home and feel good because you didn't actually kill somebody. That's not the bar that we're shooting.
Yes.
For. What we're shooting for is to develop a heart for people that doesn't even hate them. And because it's that hatred that over time can eventually lead to violence against them.
Yes. So do you think, you say something, you said to develop a heart that doesn't hate people, right? So do you think the hatred that is inside or can create, can destroy us, right?
Yes, and again, like what you said earlier about that first mountain, that hatred in our hearts, it does destroy us. It makes us inhuman. It makes us less human, and therefore it makes us capable of doing inhuman things to others.
Yeah. Oh my God, I like that, and it's such an emotional topic. Then how then do we create a way so that we can have a pure heart? Like in the Bible they say have a pure heart, and y'all, I don't think it's so hard to achieve a pure heart because we do not know what is the pure heart. So much people, we are dealing with baggage, we are dealing with dilo. Things are just not going, things are just going left. You try to go right, it keeps on turning left. You try to fall in love, you get a heartbreak. So every time, or you try these things are not working, you try these things are not working. So for you to say, I am resting in pure heart, what are some of the steps that you can share with us and the listeners to say, this is the ways that you can build yourself and rebuild yourself and building a relationship with yourself and your God and yourself and your heart?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that again, that's another dilemma. I would summarize a pure heart is a loving heart. The highest aspiration for the human is to love.
Oh.
But love is hard. Love is painful.
I like the part.
It's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing that we'll ever do is
right.
truly love others and truly love ourselves, because some of us hate ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I would say, there are a number of things, habits that I think we have to enter into to cultivate that kind of purity in us. And one of those would be, because everything that you just mentioned there, we can choose to and the Ignatian term for this is indifference, which is we think of indifference as a negative word, but it's not. And this there's a Buddhist concept that's very similar to this. But the idea of indifference is that we learn to hold all things lightly. We learn to live with open hands. And so when we love and that love is not reciprocated, we hold that loosely.
Right.
When we love and someone breaks our heart, we strive to hold that loosely. We surrender those things. And the more that, and I mean, we'll spend our life learning to do that, because it's very hard to do that. But the more that we can let go, the more we can surrender and practice this idea of indifference, the easier it will be for us to cultivate that pure love in our hearts. But it's a daily practice. Every single day we have to find ways to release whatever it is that we find ourselves holding on. We have to learn to release that, right?
Sometimes, like we were talking on this, so we have this podcast called Girl Unfact. It's just basically me and the girls. We're talking all things unfiltered around our sex life, our relationship with money, hookups and things like that. And my Madam Boss, she called my name Madam Boss. She said, sometimes you have to give people a revenge, right? If a man breaks your heart, go and just destroy them once again. But at the same time, that's doing you are disservicing yourself. You are losing that self of release and letting go, so that you can attract new opportunities, or you can attract a new love, new ideas, new opportunities, or new person, because you're going back and just humming. So I think, the taking a time to release is one of the hardest thing to let go and release than continuously humming. So because we are not taught to release. For example, where I'm coming from, in my country, there are no conversation around mental health, right? There are no services around mental health care, or there are no conversation. We have seen people that have been depressed, and people, they said, no, this person is attacked by evil spirits. You understand? So that traditional understanding, or that traditional concept, already blocks people to receive information and to seek healing and to seek services that can transform their life, or to seek help, because of that barrier that is blocking us. If you say you are depressed, your mother will say, no one get depressed in this family, you are crazy. You have to get up and just, so automatically you are blocked from having the conversation around your mental health issues, or around the anger that is in you. If you are anger, they say you're a witch. You get my point? So all of these things, I think, the society builds people to be inhuman, in a nutshell, because the society will tell you that that doesn't exist. If you are angry, then go and harm that person, go and revenge, instead of creating a safer way to say, if you're angry, explore these options, explore these avenues, and find healing and transform yourself. And lately, like we've seen, for example, the transformation around, in my community, people that have been seen obese or losing weight, that is starting being accepted. Before, they were like, no, this person is sick. Already there is a discriminatory ways to create harmful ways to block someone's transforming journey, or someone, how do you call it? What's the word? Like when you are rebuilding. So there's already a stigma. For example, you lose weight, no, you're sick. This person is sick. Already someone lose confidence in themselves. But now that we've seen trend, people, they're starting to accept someone who's been from obese to losing weight. So all of these, I'm just giving this as a contextual understanding around bases and some of the barriers that are there in communities that block people to rebuild themselves and transform themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a really great insight. And, it's interesting to just acknowledge that exists among different cultures too. So when we're talking about cultivating a pure heart, or climbing that second mountain, the reality is that there are cultural challenges that will stand in the way of that journey. And the reality is that most of us will need some help.
Yes.
With a therapist. I mean, I'm in regular therapy. I see a therapist every week because I need that help. I need to be able to grow in self-awareness and in self-regulation.
Yes.
I need the help of somebody that can accompany me and ask good questions and share good insights and speak into that.
Right. So in the research, is it a research or a summary that you sent me? You had wrote around us to have some exercises on the narrative 5. You've talked about David Brooks. That was highlighting it was the second mountain we've touched base. But how do you think the second mountain can be meaningful into contributing the first mountain? Can help? Should we then should we climb the first mountain and then we climb the second mountain, or we have to climb them at the same time so that we continue being human whilst we elevating our career, we developing ourselves? What's the procedure in your analysis?
That's a very good question. And this is difficult because when it comes to our careers and vocation, in order to get our foot in the front door, often all we have is our resume, our professional accomplishments.
Yes.
And that's so hard because I often feel like, if I could just get 10 minutes with a real human being at that organization, and we could just talk. I feel like that would do so much more than my resume would. But we don't live in that world anymore. It's a very different world. But still, the reality is that the contribution that we're going to make through our career or our vocation has as much to do with who we are as it does with the professional abilities that we bring to any job.
Right.
It's who we are, because many of us know highly qualified people in organizations who are jerks and who are grumpy and hateful, and while their resume would say they have great capacity for contributing, because of who they are, they're not really contributing anything to the organization. And I know people whose resumes are somewhat weak, but because of the strength of their character, they're making a huge contribution in their organization.
Yes.
So I think as we are building our careers, our vocations, it's so important for us to continue to develop ourselves, to focus on those internal qualities, because in the end, they're probably going to have the greatest impact in the organization.
Yes. They'll contribute towards the cultural and behavioral change of that organization. Right. The practices, how people there's so much good can do, So yesterday I met this girl, and I haven't met someone in a long time, a younger girl who's so passionate about the work that they do. She was explaining wholeheartedly that you could feel her when she's talking about the work that she was doing. I was like, wow. Oh my God. I don't remember when last I was this dedicated and this passionate about what I do, and so proud and so confident and so eloquent about what I do. That's when I noticed that this girl, sometimes she's in a right career and her place, her heart, you could feel that she's climbing mountain 1, she's climbing mountain 2. She was rested. She was pure. I was like, wow, that's so interesting. It's very inspiring to see people that are still dedicated about the work that they do, and they talk boldly. They are rested. You can, like when someone, you could feel their energy about. I was like, wow, for a young person, then that's a good thing.
That's right. Yeah, there's something very appealing about that.
Yes. So do you think nowadays, because of, we were talking earlier on around the job market, sometimes it's so hard to find your particular aspiring job, that where you want to be, but you end up taking a job because you want to pay bills, you have checks. And I think that's what people, they lose motivation, they lose interest, because they're not dedicated in this particular work that they're doing, but because they have bills, they have to. Do you think that contributes to dehumanizing people, or people losing interest, or people being jerks, or people being mean, or it's just?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hard truth is that not all of us, at least not in every season of our life, not all of us in every season of our life will be able to have the opportunity to get paid for something we love.
True.
We might eventually get there. There might be a season where that's true. it's probably not going to be true across the whole span of our professional career. We're not always going to have the opportunity to get paid for what we love. And so we have to make an intentional decision around that even when I'm in a season where I'm getting paid for something I don't love, I'm still going to pursue things that I do love. And so I'm going to, I might not find meaning in bookkeeping or, serving food or driving Uber or, something like that. Maybe I'm doing that just to pay the bills, but I can still pursue things that I love.
Right.
I can volunteer for organizations that I care about. I can become involved creatively in writing or painting or music or other sorts of things. I can still pursue what I love, even if I'm not being paid for what I love. And while at the same time, continuing to look for opportunities in my professional world where there's a little more alignment between those two things.
Right. I think that's a beautiful way to put it, that you can still cultivate what you love while at least you're pursuing what the options that are available in front of you, right? So that you can build sustainability and, to fill you up. So what are some of the weaknesses of urology of urology, do you think?
Some of the weaknesses of like eulogy virtues?
Eulogy virtues, yes.
Yeah. Well, there's, in a sort of a capitalist culture, meaning and worth are given to people who meet certain external factors. So we applaud the person who gets the promotion at work, who has the corner office, who has their name on their door, who graduates with a higher degree. And we don't always applaud the person who is a wonderful neighbor, who is kind to children, or makes a whole career that is serving people out of the spotlight. And that is one of the challenges of sort of prioritizing eulogy virtues, those internal virtues, because it often means pulling ourselves out of the recognition spotlight.
Yes.
Right. And being content with life that's often lived somewhat anonymously.
Wow. Interesting. It's very heartbreaking because we live in a capitalist world and things, they just, the one with the best resume wins professionally more than the one with the good behavior. So.
Right. Yeah. But, go ahead.
Yes, that's why the society is promoting. So, it's as long as you have capacity and you'll get what you want. And so do you think now when we're talking about capacity, do you think connections help in building your resume virtues?
Do I think connections help? Very much so. Yeah, they do.
Yes.
I've applied for a large number of jobs over the last year. And first of all, it's very interesting if you're using a service like Indeed or LinkedIn or things like that, and filling out the digital resume. Often there's a little checkbox at the bottom of that says, would you like to opt out of having artificial intelligence screen your resume?
Yes.
Because what's happened is the process has become increasingly dehumanized. So that artificial intelligence is now the gatekeeper for a lot of organizations. And it's the first set of eyes to look at your resume And so your resume may never even make it to a pair of human eyes because the artificial intelligence says,
No.
no, you don't meet my qualifications.
Yeah.
So having connections or relationships really is helpful. And again, you don't want to pursue relationships simply so that you can get a job.
Yes.
Ideally, we should approach relationships as things that exist in and of themselves. They're not a means to an end. They can be an end in themselves. But having said that, I myself, as I have been involved in the job search over the last year or so, one of the simple practices that I did was that after I submitted my resume and knew that it was going to the artificial intelligence eyes, I would cold call the organization, and I would simply say, "Hi, my name's Chris. I just filled out a resume online for this open position, and I was just wondering if there was anybody there today that I could just ask a few questions about the position. Just so I could actually have a conversation with a live
yes,
and develop a little bit of relationship and connection there."
I like that because I wanted to ask you around how then do we navigate around AI being gatekeeping, and you already answered that right before I asked the question. I like that. And AI is so gatekeeping, and I like that strategy of after you submit, just give them a call and find out. And sometimes the AI will give you a response that your application is made it to the next round. After that, it goes Z. There's no response. There's no communication. So I think it's good to follow up again. Yeah. So that's interesting. So, which one is your latest book? Is the 10 minutes?
The 10-minute transformation, or
the one that you launched recent?
Oh, 10-minute renovation.
So do you want to share what's the book about and what does it entail so that the listeners can benefit?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to do that. So in the first chapter of the book, I sort of set this stage using this image, the image of walls and bridges. And so, unfortunately, so much of Western Christianity has come to focus on building walls that really keep us separated from God and from each other and from ourselves. But really, what Jesus was interested in was building bridges, tearing down those walls and building bridges. So, what the book does is it provides brief practices that can help us build bridges to ourselves, to our neighbor, and to God. So it's a very simple concept, and it tries to be very practical. And there's about 20 different spiritual practices in the book that are all sort of broken up into those three areas. Building a bridge back to myself, learning to love myself, take care of myself, nourish myself because God does. Building bridges to God and learning to become aware of God in my life. And then building bridges to my neighbor, and especially people who are different from me. How can I cultivate a love for people who are different from me?
Yes. Oh my God, that's so inspiring. And I like that because, bridges, they block opportunities, they block connections because there's a wall in front of us. We cannot connect because of this wall that's separating. But instead of the bridge, we can transform, we can cross over, we can enrich new life, we can change life, we can transform ourselves. So I like that concept.
That's
so
right.
We almost reached 1 hour, so I want us to play a cool game, right? It's called This or That. It can be wild. Are you wild? Well, so we have this game called This and That we play here on the podcast. It's a little bit fun, a little bit interesting, and just fun facts. And let me this or that. This or that. So I'll ask you a question. You have to respond in less than 3 seconds, right? Okay. So now we're on 50, 55, 25 seconds, 26, 27. Okay, I'm asking. Porsche or BMW?
BMW.
Hat or a cap?
Cap.
Spaghetti or macaroni?
Spaghetti.
Sex in the morning or in the evening?
Evening.
Shorts or long trousers?
Trousers.
Beach or river?
Beach.
Mountain or land?
Mountain.
Air or road?
Say that again.
Air or road?
Road.
Okay. Let's see which one is there. I like that you respond fast. I think I've lost this game. Cell phone or telephone?
Cell phone.
Okay. Indeed or LinkedIn?
Indeed.
Okay. Let's see. I think that's it. So let me ask you about, now this one is very personal to you. Mark a call of service or 10 minutes renovation?
10-minute renovation.
That's good. Thank you so much. Why do you like 10 minutes renovation?
Well, first of all, Mark, A Call to Service was one of my earlier books, so I feel like I've developed as a writer.
Okay.
Yeah, and then 10-minute renovation. I think there are a lot of things going on in our culture right now that I feel like the book sort of speaks to.
To that. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think every book is an indication of our stage, or every chapter is an indication of us, of our stage. So I appreciate that. So, wow. So if for people wants to order the book, where can they find your publications, like your collection of publications?
Yeah. Almost all my books are on Amazon.com, and especially this last book, 10-minute renovation, is right there on Amazon.com. You can type my name in because it's an unusual name, and all those books will pop up, but it's available there. And on my social media accounts have a link tree link to them, and you can get there from there as well.
Absolutely. So guys, if you're listening, I am chilling with Chris Altrock. You pronounce it, the last name is Altrock. Yes.
Yeah,
Altrock. It's such a tough name.
Yeah.
Interesting. So where is your last name originated from?
It's German in origin. Yeah.
German in origin. Are you German?
I have ancestors who were. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so do you still have that in your bloodline? Like with you, how many % of you is German? Do you know?
I mean, I don't know how many generations ago it was. There are Altrocks here in the United States, going back to somewhere in the 1800s for sure. So it was a while back when our ancestors first came to the United States. I've never been to Germany.
Maybe it's the time to go and learn about your history. Yeah. I've been so fascinated about learning more about my history because I don't look like the people from my tribe, I should say. People, they say I look like I'm from the West, which means western part of Africa. Some they say I look Indian, so I really don't know if. So I have to do it like a DNA. I'm just fascinated to learn more about myself, where I'm originating from, because like even I look different, like literally completely different in my family. I don't look like anyone or someone who can say, oh, I have similarities with this person. I look completely different. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I should do a DNA and just learn more about myself, my history, my origins. It can be quite a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
Yes. So we've reached 1 hour of chilling with you. Wow. This has been a pleasure, Chris. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Guys, you can follow us on The Flow with Zo Ahmed. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram or other social media platform. Is Zo Ahmed. Baby, we are keeping you black. This year it's a year of self-development. We are growing, spiritual, mental, and we are building our communities. Remember what Chris said, we are not building connections so that we can gain. We are building connections so that we can connect and we have a sense of belonging and a sense of oneness, right? Chris, it's been nothing but a pleasure. Guys, do follow Chris and check out his publication on Amazon.com at Chris Altrock. Yes, no, that's very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.